Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged. Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. This morning we have a very special guest with us. We have Mr. Brad Weinstein. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Doing very well. We're excited to talk to you this morning, and we're just, pretty pumped about some of the stuff that you're doing with Teacher Goals and can't wait to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, good morning, Brad. Good to have you on.
I am glad to be here. It's sunny. It's summer. We're rolling around school year and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be a good year.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be where you're at now?
Sure. So I like to say in my profile and everywhere I go that I'm an educator. So,
Mhm.
no matter where I've been, what I've done, you can't take the educator out of me. And, thinking back to my days, I was an elementary teacher, I was a middle school teacher, I was a coach, a department chair, a principal, a director of curriculum. I've worked in various roles in administration. And throughout my journey, what I've really liked to do and what I've really, felt passionate about is taking educators that I've found along the way and amplifying their voice, finding a way to connect with teachers because the reality is that the job is a tough job and you sometimes you got to laugh instead of cry. Sometimes you need a little motivation when you're, about when you're in the bathroom crying. Sometimes you need to hear that you're doing a good job, and that the work that you're doing matters. So a lot of my experiences and my work has really focused on, really connecting with what teachers are going through and giving them tools, strategies, and sometimes a laugh to get them through the day.
Yeah, that's so true. Like you said, there's just so much on them, and sometimes you got to laugh through the tears to keep going. So, but I love that you did that. I think we all eventually find a place where we, feel like we utilize our strengths the best, and I think you've done that for sure with teacher goals and everything else that you have going on right now.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that with Teacher Goals itself, that just started off as something pretty fun. It started off as just an account where I was just posting some stuff that I thought was funny, posting some stuff that I found to be inspirational. It was just meant to be something pretty fun until I realized that, some people were really, following it and some people were really starting to pay attention to it. And over time, what I noticed was that, people were looking forward to the content that I was putting out there. So I was like, maybe there's something to this. So, in our journey with Teacher Goals, it was never intended to be a publishing company or it was never intended to be a business or do consulting and do courses and all of those other things. It was mainly just my brain coming out, what I was thinking at the time and tweeting it out there. And, um, over time, it grew and it grew and it grew to the point where, I really wanted to help others and get other people's word out there because there's a lot of really smart people out there. There's a lot of people with great ideas, but they might not have the audience. They might not have the way to get it out to the world. And that's what we're passionate about is making sure educators are heard, they have a voice.
Yeah, that's so true. But the thing is, you must have really resonated with people for it to do that. You didn't just, have fun ideas or want to be fun, but obviously like you said, your mindset is always you're an educator. So that came through with teacher goals. And I think that's what allowed so many people to like connect with it, and to, let it grow to what it is today, which is pretty impressive.
And the funny thing is that, um, you know, it wasn't until I started, writing writing the book called Hacking School Discipline, it wasn't until then that I saw that, the brand that I've spent so many years building could really get the word out about something, and it could really help reach an audience and help, other people discover what I was doing and discover the books. So, with the success of Hacking School Discipline, I started to think, maybe I could help others out. Maybe I could publish other people's books. So that's what we did, and some crazy people took a chance on us, early on because, when we first started, we didn't really know very much about what we were doing. It's a tough business for sure. So, we came out with the Science of Reading in Action, and we came out with the AI Classroom, and both of those books went to do very well. And we decided to keep at it, and we're still going at it right now. And in fact, we're even publishing your upcoming book, which I'm excited about, Empowering Students.
I'm excited about it too.
So this may be a little deep question for you to, think about, just kind of off the bat here. But what is it about the messaging of teacher goals that you think has resonated so well with the community online?
Absolutely. It's a lot of timeliness. So a lot of people post content, and a lot of people, will post things that are good and of value. But I think just the timing, when it's back to school and you're talking about things that are funny about back to school. When it's August and you're going back to school and you see the back to school signs coming up, and when you're at the end of the school year and you're dragging and you really, really, really are tired. So it's about being very timely with your messaging,
Mhm.
hitting the right spot on the right day with your messaging. It's about not just putting out content, but putting out content that resonates with educators. So I think to myself, being in the classroom right now, it's May. What am I thinking? What as a teacher would I
Mm.
find funny right now? What are my struggles right now? You always want to be thinking about what an educator needs right now. And right now they need to laugh
Mm.
because they know that it's not overly funny that I'm about to die at the end of May and it's almost summer break. But, like I said, I'm showing that we're all together. We're all in this. And again, we're laughing instead of crying. We're all, disheveled. We're all struggling. It's going back to school at this time. We all know it's all the doom and gloom with the upcoming school year, but we're also excited about starting the school year. There's also positives to that. There's also a lot of students that need us, but we shouldn't feel bad as educators that we still want summer break to last longer, right? So for me, it's always been about knowing and being able to really get down to what educators are feeling at the moment in time because I experienced that and I've been an educator for a long time. So it's about the messaging. It's not just putting out content for content's sake. It's about putting out content that I think is going to help somebody at the moment.
That's so true. And it's a good point. And, you still reflect on that, even being out of the classroom. Isn't that important for our leaders in the schools to remember too? August
Mhm.
looks different than November, looks different than March, looks different than May, and to be a little bit more connected with everybody and maybe even what they do or how they lead. I think that's a good message to share, even from what you do now on a global level, to remind those that are in the school or the school district to remember as well.
Absolutely. And it's about having empathy, right? Like you need to know and feel and have experienced it. It's not pity, it's empathy. And you have to have lived it in order to have that, like we know how hard it is. And, when I was a school leader, you know, I can't go in and it's November 22nd and Thanksgiving is like, 5 days away and go in and observe their lesson and give them a bunch of constructive criticism and feedback right then and there. You got to know where they're at. You got to know they're struggling. Sometimes they need a high five or a pat in the back or how you're doing or you're doing great. Sometimes they need what I noticed about your lesson was, this. Have you thought about trying this? So it's all about the message. It's how you convey it, but it's also knowing and having trust in your teachers and knowing that they are doing their absolute best. And when you're thinking about the educators, sometimes you have to have a high emotional EQ or an IQ. You have to know how my message is going to come across right now, right? Like how, like if I were to say this to the teacher right now, would this have a positive or negative impact? So being very careful with your messaging, being very careful with your words, spending most of your time, you like to talk about this, spending most of your time giving the positive, focusing on the assets and strengths of the educators that you have. And I found, and I remember that from your session. I saw, on the Principal Boot Camp, it's all about assets based and looking at the positive. If you ever want to get them to move in the areas they need to move.
Yeah, absolutely. And, because I hear, and I'm sure y'all get, messages all the time from so many followers, but I get them that, will say things like, okay, it's the week of Christmas break and they're coming in to observe me. I mean, I'm like you, it's like, do you not remember that week? As an educator, being in an administrator role now, like you said, that I really do. I mean, it's important to have IQ, but man, as a leader, just the EQ, that empathy, that compassion, that connection is just so important to, like you said, gaining their trust and knowing that, when you show them that, you build that trust with them where that you don't have to feel like you have to micromanage them all the time because they know that you have the best interest for them. So I think that's very powerful.
Absolutely. And when you come see them, you got to think about it as, if they tense up when you walk in the room or they look nervous, then that's a problem, right? Because you've only been in the room to observe them, or when you've come into the room, you've nitpicked them apart, right?
Yep.
So when they come into the room and they continue as they've always been and they are still smiling, they haven't missed a beat with their kids, you can tell that there's been some rapport, there's been some front loading of that relationship. You can tell it's not the first time you've been in there. And you can tell that when you come in there, you're there to help them. You're there to look for the positive, and you're there to maybe look for a tip or something they can work on. But, when you create that culture of feedback and that culture of this guy's not coming to get me, this guy is
Right.
actually somebody that knows what they're saying and they know when to say it. And I actually look forward to them coaching me versus them criticizing me or them evaluating me. So, I just, one thing, I'm not a perfect educator by any means, wasn't a perfect administrator by any means, but I always felt the timing, just like with the quotes, just like with the posts, just like with the books, the timing is critical. It's not what you know. Sometimes it's when you say it and how you say it.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true.
Hmm.
Because just going back to that, if an administrator's coming in the week before spring break or before Christmas break or winter break, why are they choosing that time? What is their message with that? Like you said, it's all about the timing. What are you saying, not saying, why? And you made a good point too, you know, and I've never really thought about that a lot. That would be a good thing to observe, but how does the teacher react when they walk in the room? That tells you
Mhm.
everything about that relationship. That's
Mhm.
powerful.
Mhm. And the kids see it too.
Yeah.
Everyone notices it. When you walk through a school, and as when you walk into a school, you feel the culture almost right away. You feel the climate right away. Same thing. If the kids are saying so and so's coming, when you're coming into the room, then there's a problem there.
Right.
They've already told them, hey, watch out for so and so, and warn them of their behavior and all those other kinds of things. But the reality is that by the time you give that critique, by the time you evaluated them, you've already given them chances to work on that. You've already given them coaching. You've already given them a resource. You've already
Right.
given them the tools that you have with all of that. So just knowing who it is you're talking to, knowing how they need to hear it, when they need to hear it, is something big. And like right now, like no one wants to hear. Right, it's end of July. No one needs to hear about you know well, your kids are the best and teaching is amazing, and you're a life changer. Maybe people don't need to hear that right now. Maybe people need to be okay with, what, I'm on summer break, leave me alone. um,
Exactly. Yeah.
leave me alone. I know that I make a difference, but I'll make a difference in 3 weeks when I'm back in school.
Yeah.
So that's just something to always keep in mind, is that it's okay that teachers are on a break right now. It's okay that they're doing what they need to do. They don't want to be reminded every day about the pressures of the job or be guilted into, well, you should feel bad that you have time off right now. Yeah.
Good point.
I really appreciate how you talked about timing of feedback. It's so important. I mean, so many businesses that I've observed, I mean, that's one of the biggest issues with management is, how many different things, how many different pieces of feedback can somebody integrate at once?
Mm,
It's not very many. It's,
Mhm.
way less than we would like to think it is. So yeah, that's super important.
abs-
So I really appreciate talking about building that internal community inside schools. So we've talked to several people so far, and they've mentioned some of the initiatives that they've taken outside of the schools to, kind of bring in that local outside community. Can you speak for a second on the importance of that in schools?
of bringing out outside stakeholders.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So when you look at a lot of our schools, people like to talk a lot about academic gaps. They like to talk about social emotional gaps. They like to talk a lot of gaps, right? Which is
Hmm.
a deficit mindset in a lot of ways. But
Hmm.
when I work with schools and when I think about schools, those students are no worse behaved, or those students are no, less intelligent than the other students in the community a few communities over. I like to think of it as an opportunity gap. They have not heard as many words potentially when they were kids, and they were not maybe have read
Mm.
to or as much, or they might not have ever been to like they might not have ever been to a mountain with snow, or they might not have ever gotten on a plane. So there's a lot of lived experiences that some students
Mm.
get, and they've learned. And you like to talk a lot about play and recess, right? Maybe students didn't have a safe place to play. Maybe they didn't have relatives. Maybe they didn't get a lot of time to have all those kinds of things. So I look at it a lot as what are the gaps in opportunity that a lot of our students have had, whether that is parents at home that have read to them or are college educated and then have lived through and can help them guide them towards college and know what it takes, or do they have an uncle who's been a dentist, right? Like they don't know what they don't know. They haven't been exposed to what they haven't been
Right.
exposed to.
Hmm.
You give every kid a fair shot, you give every kid opportunity and access, you're going to see results. So when I was a director of curriculum, it shocked me when we did a global challenge about how to get luggage on a plane faster. Like that was the challenge they had to solve. And I would swear more than half those kids had never been on a plane.
Right.
So you're going to send kids out and ask them to do a real world challenge without even having been on a plane, without having talked to a pilot, without having seen luggage on the belt that it does, right? Like you're already at a disadvantage if you don't have those lived experiences at the airport. Same thing when we did a challenge about, so we brought in Republic Airways and we brought in the airline. We had pilots that looked like the students that we served come in and talk.
Mm.
We had executives from the company come and judge the solutions to the real world problems. The students went and visited. They went and visited the airline. They got to see how things worked. So when you're thinking about the opportunities, we have to make and give those opportunities to level that playing
Hmm.
field. It's not just giving them more math. It's not just giving them more rigor. It's not just giving them more content and longer hours. But how are we bridging the gap? How are we exposing them? And we need outside partners to do that. We need people to come in. We need people to come in internally and talk to the kids because I didn't know as a kid that, I didn't know 99% of these careers even existed. It was a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. You had your basic professions. The reality is they don't a lot of our kids growing up in these communities, they don't know about, being a food scientist and what that's like. They've never even thought about it. They've never had a relative that's done it. They've never had a friend that's done it. They don't see people that look like them in that profession. So it's important that we bring in people like Republic Airways. Like we brought in Conagra Foods. We brought
Mm.
in, Gleaner's Food Bank. We brought in a bunch of people. Every time there was a real world challenge, we brought in a company. We worked with the Indianapolis Zoo. We worked with, the Motor Speedway in Indianapolis. Like our students have not had these experiences,
Right.
and it's not their own fault. It's just that they have not been at a point where they had that opportunity. So bridging those gaps, now that everyone's been on a plane, now that everyone has been to the zoo, now we can get down to business. And these people want to work with schools. Like I have very rarely talked with a partner who's like, you know what, we don't want to send anybody out there, or you know what, it's a bad idea to have a field trip out to our company. businesses are dying and they're vying for that pipeline of talent, right? And really, it just takes some meetings and some phone calls to get something going. So no matter if you live in a small town, you live in a city, there are people that really need workers. They really need employees. They really need that pipeline. So you have that pipeline, you have those people, and it's a win-win relationship. You're trying to get kids to high opportunity, high paying jobs and careers, and they really need people in the profession to come and do those jobs. So it's a win-win for all.
Yeah, that's so true, and I like that you went that route. First thing I thought of is I remember growing up, the field trips was one of my favorite things because it is you're out in the real world experiencing something. And the other thing too, we've talked to a couple of people that talked about in Switzerland they do an apprenticeship. So even I think starting at the age of 14, students can actually go out and learn a skill and get paid for it while they're still in school. So they're
Mhm.
getting credit for school, they're getting credit towards certification, they're working on the job, and they're getting paid. And
Mhm.
so, the gentleman was sharing with us that, you don't have to worry about motivation. You don't even have to worry about things like absenteeism. Those things take care of themselves because they're out experiencing something, trying something new. And it's okay if they find out they don't like it. It's good that they find out early and then they can try something new. So, but the thing is, like you said, what they don't know. And so that when you like that opportunity, it's hard to, figure out what you are good at and what you would like to do.
Mhm. Absolutely. And in one of my jobs, I was working in the CTE. I was working with CTE, and the students, while they were students, got licensed as a CNA, a certified nursing assistant. They could get their CCMA in the program and a certified medical assistant. They could do work-based learning while they were there. So they had all this opportunity. They were already in high school making more money than a lot of their family members were making. They already had a certification, which some people in their family had not, had that opportunity. I didn't have that opportunity in school. So there's all kinds and you have to partner with a hospital to make that. You have to partner with a residential home to make that happen. But the reality is that we are changing trajectories by giving students these opportunities early on and often in high school and even looking at the middle school level.
Absolutely. And the guy even made a good point. I don't want to go too far down this road, but because people were like, well, in America, we get the 4-year degree. And the guy explained to him, well, your person goes for a 4-year degree. The first 2 years in college are just general studies anyway. So they really only have about 2 years of study in whatever field they're going to be versus the apprentice person that's probably 3 or 4 years of high school, a year or two out of high school, then they get their 2-year degree or whatever and their certification, but they already have 6 years of experience and they're still younger than the person that's graduating college. And so when you put that perspective in it, it's like, wow, that just changes your whole concept of, you know, going to college or not. They have more experience and, like you said, probably making, more money than family members or whatever, but definitely the potential to make more money than they would, in any other route, really. So, yeah, there's so much potential out there for this that I think we don't do a very good job of. And like you said, I don't know. Hopefully they do better. And I know a lot of schools are moving towards more the CTE and districts and everything. But yeah, the communities, we know places like you said that they need workers really bad. And so I think if they were approached, they would, be more than willing to work with school systems and make that a viable option.
Absolutely.
So let's talk for a minute about brain and body brilliance. So that's exciting. That's something that's coming along pretty shortly, right?
Absolutely. So I've been talking to Dr. Laurie Desatellos at a Butler University for a couple of years now. And I have been in a lot of schools in the last 5 years, ever since Acting School Discipline came out. The biggest problem we have in schools is tier one. What we have great curriculum at tier one, we have great teaching strategies at tier one, we have great interventions when students don't get the content. What we don't have is consistency in tier one when it comes to the social emotional learning and when it comes to behaviors. I feel like from room to room, you walk from one classroom to the next, the environment's gonna change drastically in what you expect. And I like to say to teachers sometimes, if you were to teach algebra in a high school in period one, then you were going to teach a different subject at the middle school for period two, then you were going to go to an elementary and teach it period three, back to back to back. Each principal had different rules. Each principal had different grading systems. Each principal had different ways of managing conflict, different procedures, different times, different expectations. Could you be successful in the same day working at three different schools in three different curriculums with three different leaders? And I would argue no. But we expect kids to do that, which is insane to me. We expect kids to be successful going from period to period to period with inconsistencies in expectations and inconsistencies in rules, inconsistencies in how we deal with behavior. So no wonder the kids are confused, is what I like to say. No wonder they don't know the expectations. No wonder the teachers say, well, you should know better. Well, in the period before, I could have my cell phone out,
Exactly.
and then period, I can have it out. If the teacher's not looking, they don't really care. They say don't have it out, but they won't do anything if I actually have it out. And in the next period, if you even look at your pocket, the teacher asks for your cell phone. It's wild how different these things are. So I was like, okay, how can we get consistent with not just the language and making sure we're consistent with expectations? How do we get consistent in how we work with students and brain development? So a lot of discipline out there, especially punitive discipline, is very reactive. You have a lot of dysregulated adults, and a dysregulated adult is not going to do any good. They're not going to make good rational decisions, and they're only going to amplify the behavior to make them worse in a lot of cases, right? We're trying to teach students, and we can't just teach students that you're not going to punish behaviors out of students, but you are going to give them skills, and you are going to give them coping mechanisms. You're going to help them regulate. You're going to teach them techniques to do it better next time. So thinking about Dr. Desatella's work, it's not like a lot of the work out there is outdated. It's you look at a lot of the programs out there, you look at a lot of the strategies out there, they're based on things that aren't the latest and greatest brain research. So a lot of her work is going to be grounded in the nervous system, and it's not just emotions and feelings, but in sensations in your body. It's how do you manage and track what your body's doing, and what are you feeling at the time that it's doing it, and if you're feeling this, what should you do? So a lot of it is not just what students should do. A big part of the book is also what the
Yeah,
adults should do.
teachers. Yeah.
What should the teachers be doing when you see a behavior? How do you ground yourself? How do you change the mindset? How do you look at a behavior, and how do you co-regulate with students? How do you have touch points with students before behaviors even occur in the first place? So a lot of it is a lot of proactive strategies or preventative strategies, but the thing I'm most excited about is just the pure science behind it. It's how the brain actually works. It's not going against the brain. It is taking brain development, taking brain research, and bringing it into the discipline process, making sure students have skills, making sure students have strategies, and creating environments where students can learn. So, if you Google brain and body brilliance, if you look on Dr. Desatella's website, you look at TeacherGoals' website, you can learn more about the book. But I'm super excited about, the science behind it. And I feel like the science behind it can be applied to any situation. It can be applied to, no matter if you're doing restorative practices, no matter if you are doing PBIS, no matter what kind of discipline system you are, you always have to consider how the brain works and what the brain is doing, but not just the brain, the nervous system, because a lot of it is on the brain. But how is the nervous system involved in discipline is something that, I didn't know too much about until recent years. But, after listening to her, I was blown away.
And that's something I actually have studied for years. And when we talk about like the brain body connection, and that's one of the reasons I'm such a big proponent for recess, for unstructured play, because that movement helps build and increase the function of the executive function of the brain, which is where we control our emotions. And so, we have students sit all day, and I'm sure this is, a lot of the things you'll go over too. But, we think our students are behaved when they sit still and quiet in their desk all day. And they have no movement. There's no spatial movement. There's no development. And so they really have no way to develop those emotions. And so they just continue, like you said, to use those emotions. That's the only way they know how to deal with it. And sometimes we have adults that's how they react to, like you said, which only escalates the problem. So, yeah, I think that's awesome because it's so important to help students do that. Even in my book, I talk about reframing behaviors. If a
Mhm.
child's argumentative, we just think that's bad and punish them. And, we're not saying there shouldn't be accountability when they do things wrong. But, if that's part of their personality, why not, like you said, help reframe it and help them learn how to do it the right way? Not that it's bad and they should never do it, but, you know, and I always use the example when I share with teachers. I'm like, if you were in court, would you want your lawyer to be good at arguing? Of course you would. You would want him to be a great argumentative person. And so, but training them how to do it. And I think that's so important. Like you said, with that, it's, training them how to deal with those emotions, how to, what they need to do, the sensations and things, know how to respond to those the right way. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out too.
I mean, factory model of school, write down, sit down, be quiet, do as you're told. And the reality is that when it comes to our kids, the ones that are successful, that I see being successful, are the ones that have personalities. I wish I had a big personality. I wish I was overly charismatic, like some of the kids that I encounter. And we can either use that and hone it and teach them to use it for good. Think about every podcaster you see. Think about every YouTube star that you see. They have charisma. Those kids probably got in some trouble in school, and
Right.
they probably did.
Yeah.
But the reality is that we're beating that out of them, and we're not letting them be who they are because we need everyone to be quiet for 47 minutes in a row so we can talk to them or get through this lesson. The reality is that collaboration, that communication. How do we hone in on students' strengths? How can we make it so that learning is more collaborative, is more hands-on, is more communicative, is more critical thinking inspired, and all of those, so those students can really flourish? Because I can tell you this: the students that can memorize a bunch of content on a test and regurgitate it, that's not what we do in our jobs. Like, I don't know
Right.
about you, that's not what we do. There's a time and a place to be able to be quiet and sit down and type. But a lot of the very successful people, the entrepreneurs, the people that do more hands-on stuff, they are not going to sit there and want to just sit around at a desk all day. And we're training students to be in a factory. We're training students to sit at a desk and do as you're told by their boss. But we're not really with how we do discipline. And that's why I'm so excited about your book as well, because it says empowering students. How do we empower students to take accountability for their actions? But also, how do we empower students to be who they are?
Absolutely. And it's funny because we in school, we don't have time for recess or for unstructured play, yet we want to teach them how to collaborate and work together. That's where they learn it. Children learn on the playground, they learn at recess, they learn at unstructured play. They use their creativity. They learn how to collaborate and give and take. They learn those social skills that we, think we need to put in a book and give them, which it probably adds to it. But children learn naturally through the movement, through the play, which again goes back to her book too. But I'm a big proponent of that, and share is you know we try to teach children the way we think they should learn instead of the way they naturally learn, and there's a
Mhm.
big disconnect with those two.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that had ever considered it from the lens of a student, moving classrooms and having
uh,
different teachers that, you wanna, they want to not necessarily impress, but to please at least to some degree. So if somebody told me that they were doing, that they had very inconsistent leadership in their organization, I would say, well, that's the recipe for stress. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to reading Brain and Body Brilliance. It sounds like there's a lot of good research that has gone into that. So, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about some specific teachers, maybe from your from your own education or some that you have worked with over the years, maybe some mentors that you've had, who in education has left the biggest impact on you?
Um, I would say, when I was going through as a teacher, um, you know, I had a leader when I was still a middle school teacher, and she was just annoyingly positive. And at the time, I was annoyed because, hey, why you always, I thought at first, why is she always so happy and chipper and optimistic? And all those things, because this job is hard. We're struggling right now. But then, what she taught me, not by just sitting there and lecturing me and doing a PowerPoint to show me this, but what she taught me through her actions, right? Is that, and again, this is a quote, I'm going to butcher it, and I don't know who said it, but essentially the gist of it is that being positive in difficult situations is not being naive. It's
Hmm.
leadership.
Leadership. Yeah.
It's leadership, because and you've also heard the phrase that mom ain't happy, no one's happy, right? So it's easy to get caught up in the job. It's easy to get caught up in the negative. It's easy to join the whining wagon. It's easy to go and gossip. It's easy to get caught up in the difficulties of the job. But the reality is that leader is still struggling. They're still having a hard time. They're still, they're not being toxic positively. They're not telling you, oh, just don't think about it or don't worry about it. She just modeled that, it's tough right now, but I'm still having a good time, and we're going to make it. Like, I validate you. I know that you're struggling, but you know what? How can I help? What can we do? And it just showed me that being in my job, I can't get caught up in the negativity,
Mm.
but I also have to not be toxically positive. I mean, I have to not show toxic positivity towards people. I have to not say, well, we're not going to talk about the elephant in the room, we're going to focus on the win for the week. You know what I mean? We can't ignore their concerns,
Right.
but we have to be like, yes, I hear you, you're 100% correct, how can we solve this together? And we're going to do it because we have smart people in the room who are going to do it. We're going to do it because we all believe that the students can and will learn, right? You need to be that leader who is going to take something and validate people's experiences, but you're going to be solution oriented. You're going to be solutions focused. And that's something that I really learned. And, I'm not always perfect. Every once in a while, I'll talk to another administrator, and, we'll both throw a pity party together about how tough it is right now, about that parent that said this or whatever. But in front of the staff, that's a different story. As the leader, you have to always see and know that we're going to get through this and demonstrate that. And there's the same leader that also said, never lose your teacher eyes in this job.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then I've talked about that, knowing how teachers are feeling, like, you got to think, I'm having this meeting with this teacher right now. Mom or dad just called and complained that they, gave them an F on their assignment or something like that. You need to be thinking, this teacher's probably scared being in the
Yep.
principal's office. The teacher's
Yep.
probably worried about things. The teacher's probably also angry that the parent didn't contact them first. So I always would go in there and say, okay, tell me what's going on, versus, hey, you should not have done this, and going about that way. Hey, here's what I got the email for. Tell me what's going on. And again, that's that restorative lens that I have, that I use.
Mhm,
But that's a lot what I learned, and almost everything that I do was observed in somebody else at some point, right?
mhm.
Like, we have original ideas, of course, but we've learned so much of what we do by seeing positive leaders, positive co-teachers, positive people in our lives, even our parents, even our relatives.
Yeah, that's so true. And, in one of my books, I share that even in high school, I remember my principal, he was all about building relationships. He would just come in the classroom and just sit and visit, he would call it. He wasn't there to give feedback or to, give an observation. He just wanted to see what was going on. And I never really thought about it till you mentioned that earlier. You know, how the teachers respond to that? Well, most of them, come on in or just didn't miss a beat because they were used to him just coming in and watching and observing. The other thing, too, you hit on that I have a hard time with the whole toxic positivity too, because it's like, is it really, or is that just your negative mindset seeing everything that way? Because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about one of the biggest problems with negativity with people, and even with depression, is that they ruminate in the negative. We can all have a bad day, but if that's all you think about all day, then you're probably going to have 2 bad days and 3 bad days and 4 bad days. So they're like, you can feel bad, you can have these, but the moment you start ruminating in it is when you're having a problem. And we have to figure out and learn how to help people move past that. So I think you're exactly right that. But yeah, that, it only takes that one negative person. Like you said, it's easy when they start with the negative talk to jump in when you've had a long week and a bad week, or that student got on your nerves too. It's real easy to jump in. I think they call it negative contagion or something, where it spreads quickly if you allow it. So I think it's so important to be aware of that. And like you said, that lady that impacted you, you know, that was her mindset, and she made her mind up. Even if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to focus on the positive. And I think that's a powerful statement.
Talking about stress and negativity, what do you do for yourself to get over some of that stress or work through it or just de-stress, hobbies, or what's your plan when things start to get tough?
When things start to get tough, and when things really start to get tough, when you're not a planner and when you procrastinate and you get behind, and I've learned this lesson, and I've been in this rut before, is that if you're not ahead, you're behind when it comes to leadership. So you're going to have something come up every single day that's a
Mhm.
fire. It might be a
Mm,
small fire, it might be 18 little fires, it might be 3 huge fires. There's going to be something that comes up in your day that's going to mess with your schedule. So what I've found, and I've learned the hard way, too many times, before, was that if you're getting ahead of the game, you're going to be a whole lot less stressed in the job. I don't care if you're a teacher, I
mhm,
don't care if you're a leader, I don't care who you are, but if you have a lesson that's due tomorrow and you're working on it tonight, and then something doesn't go right tonight, like your kid throws up or your dog messes up your carpet, or you have something you need to do, you need to run an errand, your kid forgot their project, so you need to go get a poster board at Target in the middle, at 9 o'clock at night. What I found is that being a planner is something that I strive to be, and when I have been, it's been a lot less stressful. But aside from not procrastinating and getting yourself in a position where you can deal with a fire and not get behind, and not get overly stressed about it, I just like to relax and play with my kids, spend some time with them. And they can be a handful themselves, being, 7. They can be stressful themselves, but it's a different type of stress. But
Right.
it's also quite a different type of love and reward. So I would say playing with my kids, reminding myself of why I'm doing this and
Mhm.
who I'm doing it for, trying to be present for them and spend my time with them. And if I if I really get some alone time, I just scroll online on socials and stay away from the stay away from the negative. Look at some funny videos, some funny content. So like I don't watch a whole lot of TV. So when I get bored, I get on Instagram or I get on Facebook videos and just watch some funny stuff because there's just a lot of negativity out there, and sometimes you need to laugh. Sometimes you need to look at something that takes your mind off of your whole world coming down on you at that moment in time.
I was going to say, sometimes getting on social media, you see all the negativity too. So you have to work
That's why I
around
do
that.
videos. I'm taking funny videos. I'm not taking my timeline. I mean, I'm not just pulling it up and like whatever comes across my timeline is what I'm watching. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to look for funny videos intentionally. So yeah, as you can imagine, social media has detrimental effects and can have detrimental effects for sure. So I already have my things I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, I tell people, because you get on and everybody just gets so worked up, and I'm like, hunt the positive, focus on the positive, and that, and like with Teacher Goal, and even your account, and mine too. I just try really to stay above that. Just focus on the positive, be encouraging, and give. you know, where people know, well, if I go to their timeline or their site or their, account, I'm going to see something good, or I'll be uplifted or whatever. And I think that's so important too. And I think more people need to try and do that as well. So important. So this is called Leaders, Lattes and Leaders. So what is your hot beverage of choice? Is it coffee, latte, cappuccino, hot tea, or none of the above?
So I've always been a generic coffee guy. So like boring. Like I'm not like a black coffee guy because I don't hate myself that much. There's coffee, because coffee, you want to get the coffee and the benefits of the coffee and the caffeine. You know what I mean? But like I'll put some cream and sugar in there, but not too much. I'm not drinking a 900 calorie drink, but basic sugar and cream in my coffee because again, like I like myself a little bit. It's really that I'm not that disciplined. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to sacrifice, just to be a little bit healthier. I'll burn off those calories walking the building, right? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put 100 calories in here to make it taste somewhat decently. Um, if I want to get super fancy, I'll get an iced coffee from McDonald's. Like I'm not paying for the Starbucks. I'm not paying $5-6, but I'll pay $2.79 when I'm having a bad day. You know, a large vanilla. I think it's vanilla iced coffee.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'll drink coffee. I have to have my creamer in it. I can't do just straight. I'm not man enough for that if that's what it's called for.
I'm not either.
Oh man.
Well, yeah, we've had a great time talking to you today and had some great insights. We really enjoy teacher goals and we're sure that is going to continue to do really well. Love the content, so definitely keep it up.
Anything on the horizon with teacher goals?
Just a bunch of just some really great books coming down the pipeline. Eventually we're going to get down and do conferences and do other big events, but for now we're focusing on launching some big books, especially we're really looking forward to the book coming out next, which is your book, Empowering Students. So we're looking forward to launching that to the world, and more to come.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. All right, man. Well, it's so good to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. Y'all have a good night.
You too. This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.